When I tell people to stop complaining for 7 days, they laugh. They think it's too simple, too small, too unrealistic to change a life. But let me tell you something I learned the hard way. People stay stuck not because they lack talent or resources or opportunity. They stay stuck because they complain more than they act. Complaining becomes a habit so quietly that you don't even realize it's stealing your strength. And if a habit can be built in silence, it can be broken in silence too. When I was younger, I failed more times than I can count. Rejected from college, rejected from KFC, rejected by the same companies that later tried to partner with me. And every time something went wrong, I had a choice. I could complain like everyone around me, or I could take one small step forward. Most people don't notice that complaining is a decision. It's not automatic. It's not destiny. It's a choice you make every day, often without thinking. That is why 7 days is enough. Not to change your whole life immediately, but to shock your mind out of the identity you've been living in. 1 week of refusing to speak like a victim forces your brain to look for solutions instead of sympathy. It forces your emotions to settle and your discipline to rise. When you stop complaining, even for a short time, you suddenly hear your own thoughts more clearly. You feel uncomfortable at first, but that discomfort is the beginning of transformation. Failure is a stepping stone, people say. Yes, but only if you step on it instead of crying about it. These 7 days are not a challenge. They are a mirror. And if you look honestly, you will see how much of your life has been controlled by the words you complain with. Real change begins the second you refuse to speak like a victim. 7 days is enough to wake you up. Most people think discipline is about forcing yourself to do things you don't want to do. They imagine discipline as a battle, a constant fight between who they are and who they want to be. But the truth is simpler and far more powerful. Discipline is not a fight. It is a pattern. And patterns, once installed, run automatically. The reason you fail to stay consistent is not because you are weak. It's because your current patterns are stronger than your ambition. For years, maybe decades, you've trained your mind to take the easy path, to delay, to avoid, to negotiate with yourself. And a mind that has been trained to escape discomfort will always find a way to sabotage your growth. That is why these next 14 days matter more than you think. They are the construction phase of your new identity. For 14 days, your only mission is microdiscipline, small, repeatable, non-negotiable actions that rebuild your inner architecture. Wake up at the same time. Move your body for 10 minutes. Read 5 pages. Work on one goal for 30 minutes without distraction. These actions are too small to fail, but powerful enough to rewire your habits. The human mind loves momentum. Even tiny wins release a signal, I am becoming someone different. When I built Alibaba, people assumed I had extraordinary discipline. I didn't. I simply followed a daily structure so small and so consistent that failure became difficult. I wasn't trying to be perfect. I was trying to be persistent. Discipline doesn't grow in big heroic moments. It grows in quiet, repetitive, almost invisible choices. You don't transform because of what you do once. You transform because of what you repeat without excuses. The first few days will feel uncomfortable. Your old patterns will fight back. Your mind will whisper, skip today. You can start again tomorrow. That voice is the old you, the version you're leaving behind. Ignore it. Every day you complete your microdisciplines. You weaken the voice of the past and strengthen the identity of the future. By the end of 14 days, something shifts. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop delaying. You stop breaking promises you make to your own soul. And once a person learns to keep promises to themselves, their entire life begins to rise. Most people believe complaining is harmless, just a way to express frustration. But psychologically, every complaint is a seed. Each time you complain, you train your mind to look for what's wrong instead of what's possible. And a mind trained to find problems will never see opportunities. Complaining is not an act of expression. It is an act of self-sabotage. It slowly kills your hunger, your creativity, and your personal power. When I was young, I surrounded myself with people who constantly talked about how unfair life was. They complained about the government, the economy, their bosses, their families, but not one of them ever said, what can I do with what I have? I realized something painful. People who complain are actually protecting their comfort. As long as they blame the world, they never have to change themselves. Complaining becomes their shield, their excuse, their prison. The moment you decide to live 7 days with 0 complaints, you force your brain into a completely different mode. Suddenly, You have to replace blame with responsibility. You have to replace reaction with awareness. This shift is uncomfortable because it exposes the truth. Most of the obstacles in your life were created or maintained by you, but this discomfort is your doorway to real change. You cannot fix a life you keep blaming on others. When you stop complaining, you regain control. You start noticing solutions instead of problems. You begin to feel powerful instead of helpless. You stop waiting for someone else to save you because you realize no one is coming. And that's a good thing. Freedom comes the moment you accept that your life is in your hands. The next 7 days will test you. You will be tempted to slip back into old habits. You will hear others complain and feel the urge to join them. Don't. Winners communicate solutions. Losers communicate excuses. The world will never reward you for complaining, but it will always reward you for controlling your mind. This chapter is the bridge between who you've been and who you are becoming. A 7-day commitment sounds simple, but it is psychologically explosive. These 7 days are not about productivity hacks or morning routines. They are about identity surgery. When you commit to zero complaining for 1 week, you begin cutting away the version of yourself that reacts, blames, panics, and collapses under pressure. The old identity fights back because it survives through excuses. It wants you to stay predictable, emotional, and easily defeated. The first 2 days feel strange. You catch yourself mid-sentence, realizing how often your mouth tries to complain before your mind even understands what's wrong. This is not a failure, it is awareness. You are witnessing your old programming. You are finally seeing the autopilot pattern that kept you stuck for years. Most people never reach this point because they never interrupt their habits long enough to observe them. By day 3 and 4, something powerful happens: silence. You stop reacting to problems with emotional noise, and you begin responding with thought. Your brain is forced to search for solutions, and in this silence, new ideas finally have room to appear. You realize how much energy you used to waste complaining, energy you could have invested in building your future. By day 5, emotional detox kicks in. When you stop complaining, all the anger, frustration, and disappointment you used to dump onto others has nowhere to go. Now you must face it. This is why most people quit. Not because the challenge is hard, but because facing yourself is uncomfortable. But if you push through, you become emotionally stronger than 90% of people around you. When you reach day 7, you don't become a new person. You meet the real one. The version of you that thinks clearly, acts intentionally, and moves forward without needing sympathy or validation. The 7-day reset is not a challenge. It is a rebirth. A complete mental recalibration that removes the noise, exposes the truth, and gives you back the power you lost without realizing it. Most people think complaining is harmless, just a way to release stress. But if you look closely, you will see the truth. Every complaint reinforces weakness. Complaining is emotional surrender disguised as expression. When you complain, you are telling your mind, I have no power here. And the more you repeat that message, the more powerless you become. In business, in life, in relationships, the strongest people I've met are not the loudest. They are the ones who refuse to give their problems more attention than their solutions. Early in my career, I didn't understand this. I complained about my salary, my opportunities, the rejections, even the economy. I thought I was venting, but in reality, I was training my mind to look for obstacles instead of openings. I was feeding the very mindset that kept me small. One day, an older shop owner told me something simple. He said, Jack, you keep talking about how unfair life is, but unfairness built every strong person you admire. That hit me harder than any rejection letter. I realized that the difference between weak and strong is not talent, luck, or education. It is emotional discipline, the ability to face difficulty without using words to escape it. Complaining weakens your emotional muscles. It turns temporary discomfort into permanent identity. It convinces you that your situation controls you instead of the other way around. That is why people with incredible potential stay stuck for years. They rehearse their pain instead of practicing their power. But the moment you stop complaining, something changes inside you. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop blaming and start building. You stop looking for sympathy and start looking for strategies. Emotional strength is not something you are born with. It is something you earn. Every time you face adversity without collapsing into words. If you want to grow, you must first stop feeding the thoughts that keep you weak. Complaining is the nutrition of failure. Silence is the diet of strength. When I was younger, I used to believe comfort was the reward for hard work. I thought if I could just reach a certain point, life would get easier, smoother, softer. But the truth is something I learned the painful way. Comfort is a trap. It looks like safety, but it slowly kills your ambition. It feels warm, but it freezes your growth. And the worst part? You don't even realize you're locked inside until life forces you out. Most people don't complain because life is hard. They complain because life dares to make them uncomfortable. The moment something stretches them, a challenge, a rejection, a responsibility, they run back to the tiny space where nothing changes. But a comfort zone is just a beautifully decorated prison cell, and every complaint you make is another lock you place on the door. I remember when we started Alibaba. Nothing was comfortable. Every day was uncertainty. Every meeting was a risk. Every decision felt like walking into darkness. I was terrified, but I learned something powerful. Growth lives outside the border of your comfort. All the opportunities you want, all the breakthroughs you dream of, they are waiting in the places you avoid. Complainers never find them because they never leave the familiar. Winners understand a simple truth. Discomfort is not punishment. It is preparation. It is the gym where your courage is trained and your resilience is built. Discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishment. And discipline cannot exist inside comfort. You must force yourself into the unknown. You must learn to walk while your legs are shaking. That is how confidence is born. When you escape your comfort zone, the world becomes bigger. When you stay inside it, you become smaller. You were not designed to repeat the same emotions, the same habits, the same excuses. You were designed to grow, but growth can't happen in a padded environment. If you want real change, stop treating comfort like a blessing. It is the silent enemy. Freedom begins the moment you dare to walk beyond the walls you built for yourself and refuse to complain along the way. Let me tell you a story you have heard many times, but it is worth hearing again because most people miss the point. Thomas Edison failed over 1,000 times before he invented the light bulb. Imagine the frustration, the sleepless nights, the ridicule. Most people would have complained, shouted at the world, given up. But Edison didn't. He saw every failure not as an injustice, but as data. Every no is information. Every mistake was a step closer to the solution. He didn't waste energy complaining. He focused on creating, on experimenting, on learning. This is exactly what the 7-day challenge is designed to teach. Complaining is easy. It is the default reaction to difficulty. But innovation, progress, and personal transformation require energy, focus, and emotional control. If Edison had allowed himself to complain once, if he had wasted even one, lamenting how unfair life was, the world would still be in the dark. And that is the lesson for us. Your life, your success, will always hinge on whether you waste your breath on complaints or invest it in action. I remember in my own life, feeling crushed by rejection, by failure, by being underestimated. It would have been simple to complain, to tell the world I was unlucky, that doors were closed, that the odds were unfair. But complaining achieves nothing. Only persistence does, only focus does, only action does. Edison's story is not just about light bulbs, it is about the mindset of winners. The 7-day no complaint challenge is your personal experiment. Can you channel your energy into solutions rather than excuses? When you stop complaining, you start collecting results. When you stop whining, you start learning. And like Edison, you discover that every failure, every setback, every difficult moment is nothing but the raw material for your eventual success. Complaints steal your progress. Silence and focus create it. Remember this, the world only remembers doers, not talkers. If Edison can light up the world without a single complaint, what is stopping you from transforming your own? One of the hardest lessons I ever learned was that complaints almost always come from uncontrolled emotions. Anger, fear, impatience, frustration. These are the real sources of your words, not the situations themselves. When I was young, I would react immediately to rejection or insult. I would speak before thinking, complain before acting, and allow my emotions to dictate my reality. It seemed natural, but it kept me small. I realized later that if I could master my inner world, the outer world would bend to my discipline. Emotional control is not about suppressing feelings. It is about understanding them, guiding them, and using them as tools instead of weapons against yourself. When I faced constant rejection early in my career, from universities to jobs to investors, I could have complained, and many around me would have expected it. But instead, I learned to observe my emotions, to dissect why I felt powerless, and to convert that energy into action. That is the real power behind the 7-day no complaint challenge. It forces you to notice, pause, and choose your response. Complainers are people who surrender to chaos. Winners are those who see the storm, but move with calm, deliberate steps. Every complaint is a surrender, a moment where emotion overrides intelligence. But when you gain control over your feelings, complaining dies naturally. You stop reacting to every slight, every inconvenience, every disappointment. You start to respond, to strategize, to adapt. This is not a small change. It is a transformation in the way you interact with the world and with yourself. The irony is that once you master this, life feels less heavy and decisions become sharper. Challenges become lessons. Criticism becomes fuel, and setbacks become stepping stones. Emotional control turns the 7-day challenge into a lifestyle. Complaining becomes obsolete because your mind is occupied with understanding, adapting, and creating. Strength is quiet, and silence can be louder than any complaint. Most people think success is a result of luck, talent, or timing. They look for a big breakthrough, a single event that will change everything. But I have learned, and I want to share with you, that the real difference between winners and complainers is in the daily ritual. How you start your day, the habits you repeat, the decisions you make without thinking. These small, consistent actions shape your entire life. Complaining destroys rhythm. Complaining interrupts focus. And without rhythm, your life drifts like a boat without a rudder. When I was building Alibaba, my days were not glamorous or comfortable. I woke up early, worked odd jobs, stayed late talking to partners, analyzing markets, learning from mistakes. It was not a single brilliant idea that made the difference. It was the daily structure, the repeated choices, the discipline to do what others would not. I call this the winner's ritual. Observe, adjust, act. Observe your results honestly, adjust your approach without excuses, and act relentlessly. For 7 days, you can create this habit and will set the tone for every day after. This 7-day no complaint challenge is not just about silence. It is about replacing destructive patterns with constructive ones. Each morning, each conversation, each decision is a test. Will you complain or will you act? Will you dwell on excuses or will you follow your ritual? Discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishment, and your daily ritual is the foundation of that bridge. Without it, your intentions remain dreams. With it, they become reality. Think about it. The same person can be a complainer in one environment and a winner in another. The difference is the structure, the rhythm, the habits that guide every day. By committing to the winner's daily ritual, you take control of your life. You remove the chaos. You silence the excuses. And you let your actions speak louder than your words. This is how transformation becomes tangible, how 7 days can reset your identity and set the stage for real, lasting change. After 7 days of absolute commitment to this challenge, something remarkable happens. You are no longer the same person who started. Your thoughts, your words, and your actions begin to align. Confidence rises naturally, clarity sharpens like a blade, and your standards lift. I have seen this in my own life. The moments when I stopped blaming circumstances, stopped complaining about rejection, and stopped giving energy to excuses were the moments I began to grow faster than I ever imagined. The change is not small. It is fundamental. You are no longer a passive observer of life. You become its architect. Most people claim they want transformation, but they cling to the identity that keeps them small. They complain about the world, about others, about luck. They pretend to be victims, while secretly afraid of the discipline real change demands. The 7-day no complaint challenge strips that identity away. By the 7th day, you recognize a new version of yourself, sharper, more focused, more resilient. You will understand that complaining was not harmless. It was stealing your potential. Every excuse, every gripe you ignored added a brick to the wall, separating you from your goals. Tear down that wall, and the path forward is clear. This is not just a temporary boost. It is a blueprint for a lifetime. The zero complaint identity transforms the way you interact with challenges, with people, and with opportunity itself. You will notice how much energy is freed when you stop arguing with reality and start designing your response. This is the power of ownership, discipline, and emotional mastery. Stop complaining today, and in 7 days, you will not just feel different. You will be different. The moment the excuses end, your new life begins.